Dean Corll, known infamously as the Candyman, Corll's heinous acts were unearthed in the early 1970s. He lured young boys with promises of candy and fun, only to lead them to their tragic demise. In August 1973, a gruesome discovery was made. Bodies of boys, some as young as 13, were found buried in makeshift graves. Corll's accomplices, Elmer Wayne Henley and David Brooks, led authorities to the burial sites. Torture, rape and unimaginable suffering were the hallmarks of Corll's reign of terror. Dean Corll was known to hand out free candy to children, earning their trust. The revelation of Corll's crimes brought a sense of fear and disbelief to the community. The Candyman killer had shattered their sense of security, leaving behind a legacy of dread that would haunt Houston for years to come. Dean Corll was born on December 24, 1939, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. His parents, Arnold and Mary, had a tumultuous relationship marked by constant arguments and separations. Despite the instability at home, Corll was described as a quiet and well-behaved child. The family moved frequently during Corll's childhood, finally settling in Houston, Texas. It was here that they started a small candy business known as Pecan Prince. Dean worked diligently in the family business, eventually taking over operations. Despite his seemingly normal exterior, there were early signs of Corll's darker inclinations. He was known to have a fascination with control and power. His relationships were marked by manipulation and dominance. The duality of Corll's existence is a chilling reminder of how monsters can hide in plain sight. Dean Corll's descent into darkness began in the late 1960s. It was during this time that he met David Brooks, a young boy who would become both a victim and an accomplice. Brooks, drawn by Corll's charisma and promises of money, was soon entangled in his web of evil. Corll's first known victim was Jeffrey Conan, an 18-year-old who disappeared in September 1970. Conan was hitchhiking when Corll picked him up. The boy's body was later found buried in High Island Beach, showing signs of torture and mutilation. Brooks introduced Corll to Elmer Wayne Henley, another teenager who would become an accomplice. Corll's method was to lure boys with promises of parties, money and drugs. Once in his home, they were overpowered, restrained, and subjected to unimaginable horrors. Together, they created a network of deceit and terror that kept the authorities at bay for years. Dean Corll's methods were as terrifying as they were strategic. He used his candy factory as a lure, attracting young boys with promises of sweets and fun. Once they were within his grasp, he would drug them, rendering them helpless. His house with its soundproof rooms became the perfect prison for his heinous acts. Victims were bound with handcuffs and ropes, often gagged to muffle their screams. He used a wooden torture board with holes drilled into it to immobilize his victims. The boys were subjected to unspeakable torture, including sexual assault and beatings. Corll took pleasure in psychological manipulation, taunting his victims. The involvement of Brooks and Henley added to the brutality. Corll's methods were a calculated blend of physical and psychological torture designed to break his victims completely. Dean Corll's crimes were not just confined to his home. He meticulously planned the disposal of his victims, choosing remote locations to bury the bodies. High Island Beach, a secluded area, became one of his primary burial sites. Another significant burial ground was a boat shed Corll rented in southwest Houston. Bodies were found stacked on top of each other, wrapped in plastic sheeting. The stench of decay was overpowering, a testament to the sheer number of victims. Henley, after shooting Corll in self-defense, led the authorities to these hidden graves. The sheer scale of the horror was revealed as body after body was unearthed. Each discovery added to the mounting evidence of Corll's brutality. The burial grounds were symbols of Corll's control and domination. The end of Dean Corll's reign of terror came in August 1973. Elmer Wayne Henley, who had been an accomplice for years, finally turned against him. On the night of August 8th, Henley invited Tim Curley and Rhonda Williams to Corll's home. Corll was enraged by Henley's defiance, threatening to kill all three teenagers. In a desperate bid to save himself and his friends, Henley managed to get hold of a gun. A struggle ensued, and in a moment of sheer terror, Henley shot Corll. The Candyman killer was dead, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt end by one of his own accomplices. With Corll dead, Henley led the authorities to the burial sites, revealing the true extent of the crimes. The gruesome discoveries shocked the nation, but they also provided a sense of closure. Henley's actions brought an end to the Candyman's reign, but they also opened a new chapter of legal battles and public outrage. The aftermath of Dean Corll's death was marked by trials and turmoil. Elmer Wayne Henley and David Brooks were arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. Their trials became a media sensation, drawing attention to the horrific nature of their crimes. Henley was tried first. Despite his defense of coercion, the jury found him guilty of 6 murders, sentencing him to 6 consecutive life terms. Brooks, who had played a more passive role, was also found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. The trials provided a sense of justice, but they also reopened the wounds of the community. The impact on the families of the victims was immeasurable. The community too was in shock. The legal battles did not end with the verdicts, bringing the cases back into the public eye, reigniting the pain and anger. The revelation of Dean Corll's crimes had a profound impact on the community of Houston. The city, once considered safe, was now a place of fear and suspicion. Parents were no longer comfortable letting their children roam free. The trust in the community was shattered, replaced by a pervasive sense of paranoia. The local schools were particularly affected. The victims were all young boys, many of whom had attended the same institutions. Community leaders and organizations stepped in to provide support. Counseling services were set up and memorials were held to honor the victims. The sense of safety that had once defined Houston was gone, replaced by an awareness of vulnerability. The legacy of Corll's crimes continued to haunt the city for years. Dean Corll's legacy is one of terror and darkness. His crimes left a lasting impact, not just on the victims' families, but on the community and the nation as a whole. The Candyman killer became a cautionary tale, a warning of the monsters that can hide behind the most innocent facades. The story of Corll, Brooks and Henley has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries and films. Each retelling brings a new perspective, but the core of the horror remains the same. The legacy of Corll's crimes also had a significant impact on law enforcement. The case highlighted the need for better communication and coordination between agencies. It also underscored the importance of vigilance and community awareness. In the end, Dean Corll's shadow looms large over the city of Houston. The Candyman killer may be gone, but the impact of his